Okay, you can continue.
I like that because it really brought some disagreement into this discussion. And that disagreement is about nationalism and post-nationalism. Robert says we have to overcome nationalism, we have to be post-nationalists, and politicians like Mr. Zaoralek are not doing enough to do that. And he says we cannot do that. It is impossible, at least now. We have to work with nationalism. We have to become reasonable. And we also have a very interesting discussion about Islam and Turkey. Is it really possible to be European and Islamic? But I'd like to ask our opponent, Professor Rychlík, who sits here in the front row, for his perspective, because he, after all, studies these questions. It is his living, and I'd like to see his perspective, please.
Thank you, Chair. I prefer to speak in English because the panelists may hear me. I would start with what you said. That definitively the nation state is not the Endstation, not the end of the way. Yes, definitively, but it's not also the beginning. The national state, a nation state, is relatively, when we look at it from the point of view of our history, European history, it's a modern invention. It came to being in this part of Europe only 200 years ago or 150 years ago. In France, England, a little bit earlier, in 17th, 18th century. Before that, people didn't live in nation states. We are talking about Hungary, we are talking about France, but these were not nation states in modern thinking. They were dynastal states. Everybody knew that he belongs to an estate, that he is a free burgher, that he is a noble, that he is a clergy, or she is noble, or he is a common serf, and that he is subject of the sovereign. And the nation state and modern nationalism is a result that this old estate state disappeared, that people were now legally equal. That's the way, and that's the reason why it's not so easy to abandon it, because everybody, every human being is a social being and needs to belong somewhere, right? Or at least almost everybody. For instance, I speak 8 languages, I have 2 passports, I understand 4 more languages, I can live here and there. So I am not a good example, but of course, there are many people in the world who have no national identity. In Africa, for instance, but here in Europe, it's part of our self-consciousness. It's part of our awareness. And it's, I agree with Mr. Zaoralek, not possible simply to give it up. I would be happy if we could, but simply we cannot abandon 200 years of our history, or Poles cannot abandon 200 years of our history. Anybody here in Central Europe. As far as Europe is concerned, a European Union, yes, the idea is marvelous. I think it's the greatest idea since the empire of Charlemagne in the 9th century, because it's the first real attempt to unify Europe, not by force, as Napoleon tried to do it, or Hitler tried to do it, but to unify it from the bottom, right, by the free will of the people. The problem is what we know now, and what the people didn't know when they started to build up. When Schumann and Jean Monnet worked out their ideas, that if you want to have integration of any type, or if you want more nations to live together, then you must have an idea which would span them together. And this idea cannot be invented from the desk. I was an advisor of Prime Minister Peter Pithart in 1991-1992. I took part in the negotiations about Czechoslovakia's split. And Czechoslovakia failed, just like Austria-Hungary failed, not because someone would be oppressed there. It's a myth, it's nonsense. They failed because the people there didn't have common identity. That was the reason. And Europe, unfortunately, doesn't have common identity either. That's what we must work on, to build up common European identity. When the British people said, it's our right to decide who can come to UK and who can work there. Then they have no right to stay in Europe. And I am glad that they quit. Otherwise, they would have to be kicked out. Because if you approach to it from this point of view, then you are trying to change it to some sort of customs union or, free trade zone. And this is not worth it. I personally, I am not a businessman. I do not import, I do not export anything. I don't care whether, customs are collected or not, because I export only my ideas, and I hope that there will be never any customs taxes on this type of export. So that's so. I think that really what we should do is try to work on common identity, and first we should try to think whether we have really the common ideas and common past. Maybe have, maybe it's not so easy question. And here I would say something, what was it said about Islam and Turkey. Islam is really not a problem. Here you are in the country of atheists. Here more than half of the population doesn't believe in God in the Czech Republic. It's the most atheist and most secular state, if not in the world, then definitively in Europe. Problem is that the religion must be totally separated from the state.
Exactly.
And that's a problem of present Turkey. We would have, I believe, no problem with Turkey of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, who Europeized Turkey by separating it, the state from Islam, by abolishing of Caliphate. Present Turkey, I am afraid, deviated too far from these original ideas. You may correct me, but I have the feeling that the deviation from the ideas of the Turkish Republic and Kemalist revolution went too far. And in distant future, maybe it may be possible to come back, but in these days, it's impossible. Okay. And you said you were talking about Bosnia. Here I agree, Dayton was an American project, and it's totally stupid.
Exactly.
Because if the people do not want to live together, three nations, then let them to separate. Okay. The mistake was to force them to live together when obviously they do not wish, they do not want, and then have nothing in common. Bosnia will fall apart anyway. It's an artificial state which has no future. And then I think if we acknowledge this, then will be a way for some rapprochement between Serbs, Croats, and Muslims in capital M, I mean, in Bosnia. War started, of course, due to the Serbian aggression, but it's only part of the problem. The second part, and maybe the bigger part, was that simply that the United States didn't want simply to see the reality that there is no way to keep this artificial state which fragmented it and kept it together by force, and it cannot work. That's all parts in the civil war in Yugoslavia committed crime. Unfortunately, in Western Europe and partly also here, the war was presented. I'm specialized in Balkan studies. I speak Balkan languages. My first PhD was from Bulgaria. I spent many years there. Here it was presented, and in the West presented that it's a war of bad Bolsheviks, Slobodan Milosevic, against good Democrats, Alija Izetbegovic in Bosnia and Franjo Tuđman in Croatia. It was not so. All were on the absolutely same level. So really, European Union, the mistake was simply that it was not unified, that mainly Germany insisted on recognition of Croatia and Slovenia, which was premature in 1991. And then that European communities and European Union came to being only 1 year later. It didn't stand strongly saying, no, we must take another approach and not to force people live together when obviously they do not want to live together.
Thank you very much for this opening statement from our opponent, Professor Rehrig, and I'd ask Aisha Kulin for her reaction.
Well, if you had let me speak then, probably I would be saying the same things to you, Robert, because the fact that we were not expected into European Union because we were nationalistic didn't look very realistic to me, because French is a very nationalistic country, so is Greece, and look at Britain, you know, other speakers went through this. It had nothing to do, we are not any more nationalistic than any other country, but our difference is our religion. And you were saying that Europe needs a common culture. Well, that
Identity.
puts us in another box. But I have to remind you that our first constitution for democracy and human rights and equality and things like that, though in a different concept maybe, was in 1805. Yes, the first constitution, 1805.
First Turkish constitution is 1876.
And then it was corrected once again, and it gave equal rights to all the subjects of the empire. And even before that, before the constitutions, I have to say that the Muslim sultans treated its subjects definitely much more fairly than Christian kings, because they only collected tax from the people they conquered and left their religions and languages alone, while Europe was banishing Jews to live in their countries like Spain and otherwise. So we have in our DNAs from that empire to live together of the different ethnic groups. We can and we did live together for centuries, Kurds and Turks and Armenians and Greece and Bulgarians and so on and so forth, without fighting. If you study history, you know.
What I don't understand, excuse me, what I don't understand is normally, we don't know nothing about the life of our grandparents. When they died, we say, oh my God, they are dead, and I missed the chance to ask them about their lives and to tell us, or to tell me their experiences and so on. And when historians are coming and are saying, you have to remember the big crime which happened in Auschwitz, you say, no, I have nothing to do with it. One day it is enough. Let's take a line under it and it's okay. But when you really don't accept a progressive idea in the developing of society, you suddenly say, in 1743, we made the experience that the king of this and thing and so on, and we have it in the historical DNA that we have this tradition and so on. You have to decide. You accept history or you don't accept, but don't make it in this one time in this way, one time in this way. And it's a simple fact. You said France is as nationalist as Turkey today. It's not true. It's not true. For a French citizen, the republic comes first, and then comes the nation. Yeah? It's impossible to imagine that in any European country, people with French decency or French background are going into the streets in masses to demonstrate against the country in which they are living, what the Turkish do. And this is the reason why there is so much reserve on a possible European Union membership of the Turks. The Islam is not the problem. We have millions of Muslims in Europe. This is not the problem. The problem is the nationalist. The problem is Erdogan. But anyway, I would like to.
Erdogan does not represent the whole of Turkey. Erdogan is one man, and he gets his votes. And you have to separate the Turks and Erdogan. Erdogan is our president at the moment. He's one person.
I believe you. Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, I believe
so you cannot see us all in forms of Erdogan.
I have seen 30,000 Turks in Vienna demonstrating against the Austrian how to say in English?
The referendum, you mean?
Referendum. Yeah.
Referendum.
Okay.
Well, it's your Turks in Austria. They are not Turks in Turkey. In Turkey, we couldn't even in Ankara put a banner down because we were banned.
Okay, I believe you, but
I'd like to touch on one issue that was raised by Mr. Zaoralek and Mr. Riflig, and that's the common European identity. But before I do that, I will ask you if you have any questions.
No, we are not on this point already. We didn't have. Excuse me. You can't give now the floor to the public. We are not on this point yet.
I am just trying to signal to the audience that we
had a discussion. And he said certain things I would like to answer. He said things we should discuss.
And I will immediately ask.
And you believe, excuse me, I should teach you one important thing for your personal future. A moderator has to be moderate. Did you guess this? Yeah?
Thank you.
And if you don't accept the discussion in between of us, yeah, then we don't have a discussion. I'm not interested in it.
No, I was just about to ask you to
This is childish.
Please sit down. Yeah. I was just about to ask you to react to that issue that they raised, but before that I wanted to signal to you, to the audience, that after that I will ask if there are any questions or discussion contributions after we are getting to this issue. And that's the issue of European identity, because that seems to be really important. We don't seem to have European political parties. We have national political parties. We don't seem to have European newspapers. We have national newspapers. So how about that question of common European identity? What's your sense of that?
Your problem is that you think that European identity has to work the same way as national identity. This is a lack of fantasy, my dear. There is enormous difference. National states have the idea of unification, and to produce a national identity. And they always failed in history. A North Italian will never, ever think like a South Italian. A Prussian will never, ever think like a Bavarian. They always failed. The European idea is completely different. The European idea is the differences, the different cultures and mentalities and languages all together is our wisdom, is our richness. We don't need a national newspaper for all over Europe. Why should we have that? It's not necessary. What we need is a common law, common conditions, basic conditions for all Europeans, which make them in their chances equal. And based on nation states, there is no equality. And this is a basic right based on the human rights. I give you an example. It makes a difference if you're a German or born in Cyprus, half of a little island. It is a difference. All of them, a person living in Alentejo, Portugal, Alentejo, or in Prussia, or Peloponnese in Greece, or in Tyrol. They all are European citizens. But do they have the same chances in life? They pay different taxes. They have different quality of health security. They have different quality of pension system in their age. They have completely different conditions making their life. And equality in the basic conditions is a human right. And we can't gain this human right by insisting on nations, because it makes a difference if you're a citizen of a big, wealthy, politically influent nation like Germany, or if you are a citizen of a small, a little bit poorer, not that influent nation like the Czech Republic. Yeah? That makes a difference. But we shouldn't have the differences between European citizens. And therefore, it is necessary to produce common chances, common conditions for all European citizens, and the necessity is to overcome the nations. It's very simple. Then we had the question, okay, but we need political entities, Verwaltungseinheiten. Kann jemand mir das Wort zuwerfen? Ja? Yeah, we need political entities. Okay. Clear. And this is very interesting, this point, because the regions, the European regions, since the Middle Age times, are all more or less have the same size. They have a real historical grown cultural identity. They offer you an identity, and the network of regions would produce a much more just Europe. And I can't understand that people cannot imagine that one day nations are simply history. They are dead. I give you a last example and then I stop because it's boring to me. When the ancient Greece democracy, yeah, My Greece professor in the school, he was much more fan of antique Greece democracy than I was fan of Rolling Stones. Yeah? He loved it and he explained it. Yeah? Okay, and I was fascinated. The antique Greece democracy was based on slavery. Nobody wants back the antique Greece democracy because nobody wants back slavery. It's very easy. Even knowing what antique Greece democracy produced on arts, philosophy, science, and so on, and basic ideas of what can be democracy. Okay, one day, Greek democracy was history, was over, was past. Died the idea of democracy? No. It died the idea of democracy based on slavery. And since this time, in history, from time to time, searched up another model of democratic organization of societies. And when their time was over, they died, but never died the idea of democracy. It died a certain model. And then searched up the idea that the nation state will guarantee you the identity and the right of democratic participation. And then the nation state showed his face in concurrence with other nation states, producing war, racism, Auschwitz. And then it will die because we have the experience. And our job now is not to explain how can we save the nation states because the majority of my electors can't imagine a system without nation states. No, our job is now to start the discussion, how could it be in the next democratic model where political participation of the citizen is guaranteed, where the life and the constitution of life is based on the human rights, and where it is absolutely clear that human rights are not a cake from which every nation state thinks it could get the biggest part. In the moment where you divide the cake, you destroyed human rights. And this is the basic idea of the new Europe and the future of Europe. And it's so easy to understand.
Thank you for this reaction. I'd like to ask Dr. Richlik if he has he's got a space for a short reaction on this European, or if you want to.
Well, very short reaction. Yes, it's highly likely that one day nations as we know them today will disappear. And all states will disappear and new states will come. I once told one American when he was asking why Czechoslovakia split, I said, well, all states are coming and going. Your state will go also one day. He didn't want to believe it, but it's so. But I think it's too distant future. It has, it's not on the agenda for the practical policy of today. If we want or not, right, we must take to consideration that the nation states exist and that national awareness, it's not a question of the electorate, you know, and that the national awareness is integral part of human being, of at the beginning of the 21st century in Europe.
Give me.
Simply, I am a realist and a practical man. What will be in 200 years or 300 years? Well, that's...
Give me an answer on, to the following simple question. Do you really think that the Czech Republic can obligate Microsoft or Google or Amazon to pay taxes? They are laughing. They are looking at you and they say, Professor, you are so funny. You think we can pay taxes? No, but the European Union can. And therefore, they are paying millions now. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they are paying me because the European Union together is able to. And you, defending the nation state, yeah, would defend the becoming always more weak and poor budget of a helpless little shitty nation.
All right, so we're getting really into a controversial territory. It's high time for you to voice your questions or participate in our discussion. I'd just like to ask you to please keep your participation brief and either ask question or contribute to our topic. Wait for the microphone to travel to you, please, right here in the front row.
It's the Turkish ambassador.
Is there a waiter to bring me a glass of wine?
Do we have a microphone here, please?
Yeah, so this gentleman.
Please, over there. Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. I'm the Turkish ambassador here in Prague. I would like to remind Mr. Menasse one thing of history. As we know, the Srebrenica genocide is one of the 20th century genocide recognized by the international law. And I would like to remind that the Dutch tribunals condemned the Dutch armed forces or the government, I'm not sure, and the tribunal found guilty the Dutch army relating to its role on the Srebrenica genocide. So we can't tell that the Europeans haven't...
I didn't understand the last...
genocide, haven't, so it is not...
This Mr. He was talking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, but Mr. Menasse told that the Dayton Agreement was responsible for the Srebrenica genocide, but I would like to remind you the... Yeah.
Please, let's just wait for the microphone. Yes, go ahead.
And second point that I would like to tell that we see now the China, one of the biggest countries of the world. There is a communist regime there, but is there somebody can say that China is not nationalist? Russia is not nationalist. So every country, including the European ones, are nationalist. It's, as you said, that it's very natural to be a nationalist. Every country, even within the European Union, each country defends their rights within the Union. So
China is not trying to become member of the European Union.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your reaction. We have there was a question or participation from the back. Let's yes, please.
Hello, my name is Stanislav.
To the microphone.
You mentioned we have experience. Are you talking as a German citizen or as a citizen of such a globalized entity or global project?
The first part of the question was he mentioned.
The first part.
It's difficult to hear you. Can you speak to the microphone?
The previous lecture, this here, mentioned we have experience. As you said that you talked from German nation or from your globalized entities or entity or project.
So are you speaking as an Austrian or are you speaking as
Austrian?
someone who has overcome the
I didn't
national
understood
identity?
from which point of view comes we have experience.
We have experience with European history, yeah, and we have seen to which point nationalism leads, and we have this experience. We have seen it. We have seen the criminal history of national states in their concurrence and their aggression. I'm not speaking as Austrian. I not even know what is Austria. Let's say that the national identity which Austria offers to me is not seducible for me because leather trousers and the things and the Alps and I'm from Vienna. It's a metropolis, a city. Yeah, and the cities of Europe has much more in common than the city of Vienna with Tyrolean mountain. Yeah? So I'm a Viennese, I'm a European, yeah? Because we have a European history in common, and this is difficult to describe, but it's intensively to feel. And what I find so fascinating is the consequences the founder generation of the European project really has taken. They had an idea, and it was a great idea. We have to defend the idea and to criticize the actual situation of European Union, because there is a lot of things going wrong. There is no reason to do so as it is everything's wonderful in Europe. It is not. Yeah? But the idea is great, and we should reconstruct the vision. And therefore, I am Viennese and European.
Do we have other questions? Over there, please, in the back.
I wholeheartedly disagree with the idea that national states could disappear. Maybe on a certain territory, one state will be replaced by the other, but states are based on common goals. They might change, and therefore states might change. If we look at Czech Republic and Slovakia, they lasted 70 years together. Switzerland, with its 4 languages, is over 700 years old. So what do we need? We can nicely live with national states, but what we should learn is to tolerate the difference. It means I can remain, basically, I am a nice example of what means to be a world citizen. I'm an American born of a Russian mother, Austrian father from Währing, Vienna, who lived here in Prague, and for the last 50 years lived in Geneva and speaks with his kids French. I get along in any of these languages. For me, what is important is to tolerate that somebody can be different than I am. And that's what Europe should learn, and what should Turkey learn as well.
Thank you very much. The gentleman in the middle here.
But it is Europe, in the European Constitution is written that the richness of Europe is the variety of languages, cultures, and mentalities. It is Europe. And you have in Germany, you have in Austria, you have in the Czech Republic discussions about what is our national culture and what is fitting and what is not fitting. And we can't accept 13, only 13 in this shit national state, we can't accept 13 refugees. It's too much. They have a different religion, they have a different mentality. Europe is guaranteeing the variety and the richness of different languages, cultures, and mentalities. It's Europe. And I never, ever will understand that a man with your biography can defend nationalism.
The gentleman in the middle here, can we get the microphone to him, please? In the meantime, I'd like to remind you that we have also Mr. Zaoralek with us here and Aisha Kulin, who will be extremely happy to react or provide their views. Please.
Děkuji vám. Já jsem chtěl reagovat ještě na Atény a na demokracii. V té době, kdy vznikala ta demokracie v Aténách, tak tam žilo tak málo lidí, že se mohli vlastně všichni domluvit. Dejme tomu 20 000 a nebudeme počítat otroky. A oni, když si znáte nějaký města, kde je 20 000 lidí, skoro všichni znají každého. Takže to bylo poměrně jednoduché. My máme teď Atény v Bruselu. A je důležité, aby oni se uměli domluvit, aby mohli komunikovat. To znamená, že tam nesmíme posílat nepohodlný politiky, nedobrý, nebo řekněme politiky, který to snad nějak zvládnou. My tam musíme posílat ty nejlepší lidi, jakými máme. A tady tohle to se neděje. To je jedna věc. A druhá věc je, vy jste vyzval pana ministra, aby řekl vaší dceři, která je tady, my to můžeme verifikovat, aby vysvětlil, o co tady vlastně jde, jo? A co je to Evropská unie. Vy jste mluvil jako politik. A jestli my chceme naše děti přesvědčit o tom, že ta Evropská unie je něco, co pomůže nám, už starším, nebo jim, mladým, tak musíme k ním poslat takovou, řekněme, armádu mladých lidí, 25letých, kteří studují na univerzitě a kteří jsou tak blízko k těm 16letým nebo 8letým, že jim to umějí vysvětlit. My jim to vysvětlit nedovedeme. To znamená, že tam je potřeba strategie a na to potřebujeme nějakou dobu. Ale měli bychom si uvědomit, že musíme najít úplně jiné metody.
Pane ministře, are we sending best people to Brussels?
Like to answer the gentleman who spoke last, before the lady.
All right, please. Yes.
Já mohu zkusit odpovědět. Možná je to proto tedy, že jsem politik, že na to odpovím tak, jak odpovím, ale já nemohu jinak. Já se domnívám, že to není věc vysvětlování jenom. Problém Evropy je, že nebyla zřejmě v poslední době dostatečně připravena zvládnout třeba ty konkrétní krize, které ji potkaly. Že reakce na ekonomickou a finanční krizi, reakce na migrační krizi, a teď jsem třeba jmenoval tu nedobrou a nedostatečnou reakci na španělskou, katalánskou krizi. Že vlastně my nejsme schopni to zpracovat. To znamená, mně to připadá, že to není věc vysvětlování. To nejlepší vysvětlení nebo nejlepší věc by byla, kdyby Evropa byla schopná přesvědčit lidi, že je efektivní, že je schopná skutečně zvládat věci. Jako tady bylo naznačeno, že je schopná Evropa reagovat a postavit se velkým společnostem, velkým korporacím a je schopná s nimi jednat. To je příklad toho, co může Evropa nabídnout, to, co nezvládne třeba jednotlivý stát. A kdyby Evropa podobně dokázala předvést, že je schopná efektivní akce ve světě, kde zřejmě krize budou přicházet. A to, proč se podle mě také nepodařilo vytvořit tu evropskou identitu, podle mě to není věc jenom nějaké intelektuální debaty, ale to je právě ten pocit, že ta Evropa dostatečně nefunguje, že krize jsou nad její síly a že když přijdou krize, tak máme takovou reakci, jako je třeba Brexit. Takže já úplně nevěřím na to, že to je, že vyšlete armádu těch, kteří budou učit, vysvětlovat, co to je Evropa. Ono to funguje, když to funguje, tak to má právě tu základní přesvědčivost. Proto si myslím, že to teda není věc edukace a výchovy, ale také, že to je věc té politické akce, která dokáže tu Evropu činit efektivní. Jako to si myslím, že je lepší argumentace, než vysvětlovat, proč ji potřebujeme. Já prostě úplně nevěřím tomu, co tady je řečeno, že my jsme schopni mít tu Evropu jako richness, že jo, bohatství a variety a rozmanitost, že je to, na čem prostě dokážeme se přesvědčit, že ta Evropa je potřebná. Víte, bohatství myšlenek to není něco, kolem čeho vytvoříte identitu. Jako kdybyste se mě zeptali, proč mám rád Evropu, jo, a měl jsem vám odpovědět jednoduše nějak pocitově, proč, tak vám to řeknu historkou, která se mi stala. Když jsem si to přesně uvědomil, proč mám rád Evropu. Stalo se mi, že jsem byl v jedné asijské zemi, nevím, jestli ji můžu jmenovat, no řekněme, bylo to Japonsko, člověk tam přijel, chtěl debatovat a zjistil, že všechno je zakryto ceremoniemi, zdvořilostními řečmi, nikdo vám přesně neodpoví na to, co si myslí, protože ta země má jinou kulturu, je to prostě jiný mrav a člověk měl dojem, že tam nemůže s nikým navázat kontakt, kde by se opravdu upřímně bavil, to bylo už před lety. A stalo se mi, že jsem z Japonska přijel do Holandska, do Hágu a navštívil jsem tam Ústav mezinárodních vztahů. A když jsem vešel, tak tam byl ředitel a ten ředitel toho ústavu mi říká, bylo to už před 15 lety nebo koliká, on mi říká, včera tady byl ministr zahraničí, to je úplný blbec. A já jsem pochopil, že jsem v Evropě. A říkal jsem si, takovou Evropu já miluju. Rozumíte, tam, kde se vlastně mluví takto přímo, to je to, co tady bylo řečeno, bohatství, rozmanitost, mluví se otevřeně. Ano, proto jsem já rád Evropan. Ale problém je, že já si nejsem jist, že na tomhle jsme schopni vytvořit evropskou identitu. Já to mohu mít rád jako prostředí, ve kterém chci žít. Já se hlásím k tomu, když Friedrich Nietzsche řekl, že podstatou Evropy je, že je labyrint. To mi připadá velmi zajímavé. Labyrint, Evropa je labyrint. To je všechno krásné. To je ta složitá kultura, kterou jsme vytvořili a kterou můžeme mít rádi. V tomhle prostředí chceme žít a byli bychom rádi, kdybychom ho zajistili právě bezpečnosti, kdyby fungovalo a prosperovalo. Ale nejsem si jist, že kolem labyrintu, kolem rozmanitosti a bohatství jsme schopni vytvořit evropskou identitu. Tomu prostě úplně nevěřím.
Robert Menasse will respond briefly, but I'd like
just one phrase.
I'd like to ask the microphone over there now, please.
Just one question. What do you mean when you say Europe? What do you mean exactly? What do you mean? Europe has to understand. Europe should do. Europe hasn't been able to. What do you mean?
European history, European story, European...
No, you are speaking about European Union.
Yeah.
And you say European Union, you use it as equivalent of Europe. And you say Europe didn't understand that we can have an European identity or something like that. What do you mean with Europe?
No, European history, European story, European culture and...
No, politically, but...
No, Europe is more than European Union.
But when you say European identity is so difficult and we have to take care in Europe this and that, you always say Europe. I just wanted to know, what do you mean with Europe?
It's very abstract word.
It's very abstract, okay. And you have Minister for External Affairs, and you have only an abstract vision of Europe?
No, I have much more concrete concept. I have pro-European Union. European Union is much more concrete.
Okay, and what do you understand under European Union? When you say European Union, what do you understand under?
A union of states connected by laws, and European states connected by common decision to make policy.
Who is deciding? Who should decide? How do they make the decisions? What do we understand under European Union in the concrete political sense?
Very intricate structure of institutions and.
Yeah, which institutions?
European Commission, European Council, European Parliament.
Okay, and you know that they have different interests, and when European Commission is wanting something, the European Council is against it and is avoiding it, and so on.
It's very complicated.
It's very complicated. So
absolutely.
there is not general will of European Union. So I guess one should explain in the discussion: is it the Commission? Is it the Council? Is it the Parliament? Which of these institutions has which interests? For example, somebody said, we don't send the best persons to Brussels. And you didn't react. You should know that it's not the principal was heißt Aufgabe, task of the member states to send people to Brussels. The European civil servants are not nationally defined. They make the concours. 30,000 persons of Europe every year are entering the concours to become European civil servant. And from these 30,000, between 100 and 150 get a job in the European institutions. And they are civil servants, not any longer depending of their nation state where they are coming from.
But only partly true. At the same time, I can tell you that we are really sending people to Europe, to European Commission.
Can I just ask you to get to the point quickly, please? We have another question over there.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, please.
I thought it would be interesting for the people to know how it works, but it's not so important maybe.
Dva okruhy.